So this is a continuation of the Flower of Life, part 19 and part 20. I left out information on my Aunt Kathy. Her name is Kathy Mero, and she is my mother's sister. So this is a photo of my Aunt Kathy taken with her son Nick Mero. And this is for ROTC, which stands for Reserve Officers Training Camp. So when you look at this photograph, he looks a little bit old. This is supposedly taken in high school, his junior or senior year at the ROTC program. But he looks a little bit older than 17 or 18 years old in this photograph. But what you're going to hear in this report is that most of what comes out of the Meros are a bunch of lies, because they are part of the military's MK Ultra program. So lying is a giant part of the military's MK Ultra program and their Flower of Life program. So I guess most of this information comes from Kathy Mero when she talks to members of the family, and I'll hear stories from my aunts or my mom about the Meros, and they said Nick Mero, my cousin Nick, wanted to join the military, but he could not because he was diagnosed with diabetes. So instead of going to the military, Nick decided to go to college instead. And the choices were between a college in Utah and a college in Vermont. That was what family members told me. So I do not know what these colleges were, but I'm going to guess that the one in Vermont was Norwich University, which is the Military College of Vermont. And that was the place that the ROTC program originated, at Norwich University in Northfield, Vermont. At Norwich University was the place of the first ROTC program. And again, that is the Reserve Officers Training Corps. So I guess they prep high school and college kids to go on and join the military after graduating college, where they'll serve as officers in the military. So like I said before, the odd thing was that Kathy and Eric Mero, Nick's parents, insisted on going with Nick to college. It wasn't just, it's time for Nick to go on to college. It's time for his parents to move to whatever state, to whatever city Nick's college is at. Buy a new house in that city so Nick could stay at home. So that is very odd. So I would like to include some of the behavior of Kathy Mero was also very odd. So Nick did not have a lot of friends in high school. I think Nick has autism, and he had trouble making friends because he has trouble with relating to people and talking to people. So I just heard that his senior year there was a prom, and Nick did not want to ask any girls in his school to go to the dance with him. I don't know if he was too embarrassed to ask them, or if he was not allowed to ask them due to his parents being overly controlling. So Nick ended up going with his mother. He ended up taking his mom to the high school prom. So that is something that sounds like a joke that they'll have in the movies. There was a kid who brings his mom to the high school prom because he could not find a date. And if you look at Nick, Nick is not a bad looking kid. He is actually kind of good looking. So what would stop Nick from asking some girls at school if they would go to the prom with him? He could ask if they would go as friends. Quite often, everybody would go to the prom. They would just find out somebody who did not have a date and ask, hey, let's just go as friends. So this suggests that there's a very sick community going on. There's a very sick military-controlled community that is controlling the minds of people like Kathy Mero and Nick Mero. I now believe that Kathy Mero is also part of the military's MK Ultra program. When I first did this series in February of 2020, when I first discussed the Meros, I did not think Kathy Mero was involved. I thought she had fallen under the control of Eric Mero. But now I think that Kathy Mero, my aunt, is very much involved. And they will all lie about everything that they do. So around 2015, when I moved up to New Hampshire, my mother said that the Meros were considering also moving to the New Hampshire area. She said they were considering moving to that same area because Nick had found a school in Vermont, so they might be right close by. But they eventually decided to move to Utah, where Nick had also been accepted. So I think that is a lie. I think that they actually moved into Vermont, and I think that Nick actually attended the Norwich University in Northfield, Vermont. It is called the Military College of Vermont. So I think that they are lying to provide cover on why they are moving out of the California area. I think they are coming up with these lies to tell everybody in our family why they're moving out of the California area. And they're saying they're moving to Utah. But in fact, they have moved to the Vermont, New Hampshire area. So I first became suspicious of this in September of 2020. So I have a video on the internet, and it is called the Environmental Protection Agency Exposed. And I highly recommend everybody watch that video. And in that video, I also call the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. And I speak to a woman named Roy Ann Bossity, who called herself a food safety and defense specialist. And I recorded that conversation. So Roy Ann Bossity sounds very unusual in that conversation that goes on and on. She does not act in a professional manner. She acts very unusual. Even her title, a food safety and defense specialist, is an unusual title. So after listening to that recording, I think that is Kathy Mero on the phone, identifying herself as a Roy Ann Bossity, an employee at the Department of Health and Human Services.
Food Protection, this is Roy Ann. Can I help you?
Hello, Roy Ann. How you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Good. My name is John Harwood. Did you get my message I left a few days ago?
I'm not sure. Regarding what?
I spoke to John Rogers, who's the Keene Health Inspector, about some unsafe groceries.
Yes.
Right. Are you in contact with Mr. Rogers?
I was earlier. I mean, I haven't recently, but I do know what you're referring to, all the issues.
Right. So I initially contacted you guys a few months ago, and you referred me to the Keene Health Inspector, John Rogers.
Right.
And so he said he can't do any more with his investigation, and he referred me back to you guys.
Right.
So what can I do at this point to help your investigation?
I'm not really sure what. I'm not really sure what to do with this, because we don't just do random testing. I'm trying to remember all the issues. I know you. Why are you buying so much ammonia?
I was cleaning mold off the deck at my house.
Okay. Because and what were your reactions?
The last ammonia that I purchased, I kept containers of it outside in a plastic storage box that you could get at Walmart with a top. So I went over to that, it's like a huge Tupperware container with a lid, and I opened it up, and I got a whiff of all the vapors that came out of that, and the same exact symptoms returned, which is that you feel like your heart's beating fast, you have difficulty breathing, and blurred vision. So it's definitely the ammonia and the bleach that they're selling in the area.
Well, no, and you do not want to mix ammonia and bleach, because that is a deadly combination. It creates a chlorine gas, and that can actually knock you out and kill you. Those are really bad chemicals to mix together.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. They're in separate containers. There's bleach and there's ammonia that are in separate containers that I have to keep outside. And like I said, I bought them at the store. I brought them home. I opened them up in the house, and I had terrible reaction to it. So I brought them outside and put it in a Tupperware container, a big Tupperware container, and kept it outside.
Okay.
And it's been outside for a month or two. And since then, I bought a bunch of ammonia that I used to clean a deck. I had to clean and stain a deck, and I had no problems. And then recently, just last week, I had a dirty tarp. It had dirt all over it. So I said, you know what? I need to soak this in some bleach and water. It wouldn't hurt if I do it outside. So I go over to that Tupperware container with a lid. I open it up, and the vapors that those bottles produced gave me the same exact symptoms. So I know that it's something to do with those bottles.
Well, it's the chemical. It's the concentrated chemical. So what your reaction is dealing with the exposure of that chemical.
Okay, but my whole point is that I have been using bleach and ammonia for a long time. I know not to mix them. And what I will do is I will either spray the ammonia mixed with water on something and then wipe it off with a towel. Or I'll use the bleach separately to soak something overnight. So I have no problems with...
How much bleach are you using? Are you using the full concentration?
I mix 1 cup of bleach with about a washing machine load full of water. In any regard, if you bring home your bleach or ammonia from the store and you open up the container, it shouldn't give you these terrible symptoms. And it's only a few specific bottles that do this. So I think there's a problem with that batch. So I think that'll be of interest to your company.
Have you contacted the manufacturers of the bleach and the ammonia? Because that's really where you should be going. Like we're not going to do anything with that because it's a chemical. It's not food that you're ingesting. So we're with food protection, so we're dealing with food items.
Okay, you brought that up because that is part of the unsafe grocery products. I've also bought dates and coffee, and I use the dates and coffee. I consume them, and I have an allergic reaction. I have a reaction that causes difficulty breathing, a fast pulse rate, and blurred vision. And it's just that specific coffee. I've been drinking coffee my whole life. I have no allergic reactions to coffee.
What's the name of the company of coffee?
It is New England coffee. There's also the Target brand. It's called Market Pantry. It's what's sold at Target. So the reason I'm contacting you is because it seems like there's quite a few products being shipped into this area that causes this reaction. So I tried to bring it back to the store, and I complained to the store. They returned the product. They said they would contact the manufacturer. I said, you probably want to remove this from the shelf. I wouldn't store this bleach and ammonia in your back room. I would bring it outside, and nothing came of it. So I just think that you guys are the food safety and food protection. What does that mean, though?
We inspect restaurants and grocery stores and that type of thing.
For what? For what? What say? If this is not a concern to your agency, then what would be?
Well, we're looking at usually bacterial contamination, but we can look at chemical contamination a little bit too. But it doesn't. Your symptoms are not typical. I don't know. Your situation is definitely unique. Let's see.
So I have the receipts here.
Yeah, we wouldn't really do anything.
I have.
The other thing too is that these products are not products made in New Hampshire, so they would go to the FDA. So there would be a question of it would have to go. But again, we'd have more complaints and stuff like that, and we don't get any complaints on these.
Okay, so my whole response is that I contacted you guys. Listen, you've been real nice. Your name is Royanne. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes.
You've been real nice, and I appreciate that. So I'm not trying to provoke you in any way, but I tried to contact you guys 3 months ago, and then you guys kind of had the same answer. Then you referred me to John Rogers, and he really didn't want to get involved or contact me back. I had to send him numerous emails before he actually contacted me back. So my response is that it's taken me 2 or 3 months, and nobody's really helped me. So I don't know if you have other people calling in and you guys refer them to your medical doctor, you refer them to the manufacturer, and so you have nothing on file concerning this because you guys are kind of refusing to accept the complaint or put it on file.
Well, I handle complaints here, and we've never had any complaints like this before. So, and I just think it's something unique to you in the sense that your body doesn't like this for some reason. And I mean, what specifically are your symptoms again?
Blurred vision, a fast elevated pulse rate, and difficulty breathing. It feels like you can't catch your breath.
So that would make sense with, again, if you're inhaling direct concentration of the ammonia or the chlorine. The difficulty breathing would be, but and if you're.
But once again, I said that I was keeping it outside after just bringing the bleach and ammonia in. I use the same.
I'm not sure if on the containers of those, if they're supposed to be stored where there can be a bunch of temperature fluctuations, and if they can get too hot, that when you a lot of times containers will have a recommended storage temperature not to exceed particular temperatures or either too cold or too hot. So if it's outside in the heat, that there might be some kind of additional chemical reaction happening between the hot plastic, and the chemical.
Okay, once again, I had to bring it outside because I brought it into my house the same way I bring anything into the house. And like I said, I've been using ammonia and bleach my whole life, and only these specific bottles cause this problem. So that's why I brought it outside.
What's the manufacturer of the bleach and the ammonia?
Okay, like I said, I'll be more than happy to email you photographs of the product, photographs of the barcode, and the receipts if you want.
Okay, so again, the bleach and the ammonia are not typical ingestion items. So those aren't in our jurisdiction.
Okay.
With food.
All right.
Okay, so again, the bleach and the ammonia are not typical ingestion items. So those aren't in our jurisdiction.
Okay.
With food.
All right.
So that you would have, again, maybe EPA.
You said that.
I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure. FDA or EPA.
Okay, you're referring me to FDA or EPA, right?
I think so, yeah. Because I'm not sure. FDA on the food level, FDA would be more food, nutritional supplements. They're not really chemical. So I think the chemical probably is going to be more EPA.
Yes. Okay, I'll go ahead and give them a...
Not our jurisdiction.
Okay, I'll go ahead and contact them. But you said that you do have jurisdiction over these baby carrots and the coffee and the dates, correct?
Well, we do limited, only, at least it's food items. But the only problem is that they're not New Hampshire products. So then that does defer back to the FDA because it's an international commerce. So it's not an item that's made here in New Hampshire. So our jurisdiction would be New Hampshire products, but not international or interstate commerce products. That would be the FDA.
Okay. Is there some sort of complaint number that we do have this on file? Because I would hate to think that somebody else calls you a year from now and you tell them the same thing you told me. We have no complaints concerning this on file. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I did. Let me see if I did when I sent it to Keene.
Because I don't want them to say that I didn't allow your department time for an investigation. I like to say I did speak to her and she's referring me to you, and I have some sort of number, some complaint number.
Have you went to your doctor at all regarding these issues?
Have I discussed, what should I say to my doctor?
That you're having difficulty breathing and that you're having blurred vision and heart, because that might be something else. You might have some kind of blood pressure issue or some other kind of...
No, it was only when I consumed this product. And when I stopped eating that product, I started shopping in other area. I started going to all the way to Manchester, all the way to Milford to shop. So I never had problem with coffee before. I have no allergies to coffee, bleach, ammonia, baby carrots. So it is, I do admit that it is unusual, but I am positive that if you test these products, you'll see that some additive has been put in, something has been put in.
Do that. And what's going on with, what kind of baby carrots are they?
Okay, let me look that up. I have just a whole stack of receipts. It is Grimway Farms, cut and peeled baby carrots. And when you put them out on a plate, like for hors d'oeuvres, they turn white in like a half hour, they turn white.
Yeah, you know what that probably is that they have like a preservative, or they have some kind of a thing in the bag, and you're supposed to rinse the product coming out of the bag, and so that's just some kind of but it's not, it's safe, so it's not, I have the same issue. I know what you're talking about with that.
Yeah, if that was it, then I wouldn't have a complaint, but it causes the same symptoms, which is severe anxiety, blurred vision, fast heart rate, and difficulty breathing.
Yeah, so a typical allergic reaction of sorts doesn't cause an anxiety, it doesn't cause a...
Yeah, I think it's some weird additive in there. That's why I would like it tested.
Yeah, we wouldn't test that. We don't do testing unless there's medical diagnosis. And we don't, so there would have to be some kind of, you have a doctor visit, and then some kind that they've determined that there's, it's a little different with chemical because versus it being bacterial, because you can do a stool sample, and you can get bacteria to grow.
Yeah, so I don't have any issues at all with anything unless I eat these specific things. And so I stopped shopping in the area and I kept samples of everything that I bought. And sometimes I'll buy 2 packages of dates, 2 packages of coffee, and 2 packages of carrots, which I did. And so one is sealed, one is closed. and one is open. So I don't know what a doctor would do concerning that. I don't have any.
Again, it's usually, but we wouldn't just test those in our laboratory. Again, they're interstate products also, so then it goes back to the FDA's court.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and contact the FDA, but do you have some sort of file number, some sort of case number?
That's what I'm looking for still.
Okay. I'll stop talking and bothering you then, and you let me know if you could find that.
Yeah, I know that I did. I know that I probably have an email. I have a couple emails that went back and forth with me and Keene. And I know we had a couple phone calls, but I don't know if I have it in here.
Maybe we could document that or something. You could write something up or document that so the complaint is on file at least, because it would be terrible if let's say a senior citizen bought this coffee and they used the coffee and then they had these symptoms and they thought they were having a heart attack and they went to the hospital and then to a nursing home and they never contacted you because they wouldn't ever think that it had anything to do with the coffee.
Yeah. See, I still think that you should be seeing your physician, explaining this, and having some kind of evaluation on that, just to make sure that it isn't just coincidental that every time you reach for these products that you aren't having some other medical issue at the time.
Yeah, I stopped shopping in the area and I have no problem. So if I invited you over right now and I offered you some of these baby carrots, you would have the same symptoms as I would have. And then I would say, go see your doctor.
So, I mean, again, I know what you're talking about with the whiteness to them, and I eat them. You know, I usually rinse them in water, and but I'll eat them, and if they stay out too long, then they do turn white.
Right, that's not my initial complaint. The initial complaint is some additive or drug that's in them that is causing these terrible reactions.
Yeah.
It is very bad. It is one time I had to take a walk up and down the street, breathing real deep, because it was a terrible response to that. So.
It sounds like it almost sounds like you're having a regular anxiety attack, and the anxiety attack is going to make you dizzy because you're not breathing right, and it sounds like there's multiple things that can be happening, and it's not caused by one thing; it's caused by a different thing that has the same symptoms.
Okay, but let me ask you a question. If you in your life went and bought,
attacks before, and I can't breathe, and I get dizzy. My heart is like beating out of my chest. I've had panic attacks. So. Okay,
I've never had a panic attack. So if you went and bought a coffee from.
Symptoms kind of work with that, though. That's what it. Again, these
so you think it's
allergic reactions.
So you just think it's some coincidence that every time I drink this coffee, I have a panic attack? That's just how it should be.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. I'm not. And again, please, I'm not trying to belittle what you're saying or anything.
Yeah, it's kind of, if you went through it, Royanne, if you went through it, you would understand too. You use the coffee, you have a panic attack, you have this terrible symptoms. You wait a few days, I'm going to try the coffee again. You try the coffee again, 5 minutes after ingesting the coffee, the same symptoms return. It's kind of a no-brainer. When it happens to you, it's kind of a no-brainer. I feel like inviting you guys over and saying we're going to open this fresh thing of coffee and I'll have coffee together and see how you guys feel after that.
Yeah,
that's what I feel like, and then we can all call our doctor together.
Yeah, I don't understand that. All right. Give me your contact information again, because I know I have your information. But
sure. My name is John Harwood. My last name is Harwood.
Yep.
And my phone number is area code 603, and my email is big@gmail. So maybe you could write this up, that this complaint is on file, and then I could say that you referred me to the FDA or EPA. Because
yeah, I'm gonna look for the information on my stuff.
Okay, well, thank you for having this discussion with me. I appreciate your time.
Okay.
Okay, have a good day. Bye-bye.
All right, you take care. Bye.
So once the military takes over our country, once the military takes over our government, once the military takes over our economy, it's all a big joke in the military. And they will just assign whoever they have on or whoever they want to play the role of any government agency that they have. It just becomes a big joke. So at that time, in September of 2020, I thought, yeah, she does sound a lot like Kathy, but that is all that I thought. I said to myself, a lot of people sound alike, and that doesn't mean that that is Kathy. But after listening to that tape, that sounds exactly like Kathy Mero. So about 1 year before, in 2019, a guy who looked exactly like Nick Mero was sent to my house when I called for a tow truck. I have two vehicles. One's an old Toyota Camry, and I pulled the car off of my driveway to kind of clear a space on the driveway to allow for some more parking on the driveway. And when I went to pull the car back onto the driveway, it started, but the car's gear shift would not go into gear, so I could not move the car. I called AAA, and they sent a tow truck over, and the tow truck driver was a tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid who looked to be in his early 20s, and he looked exactly like Nick Mero. So the young man looked to be in his early 20s. He was a little taller than me. He was 2 or 3 inches taller than me, at around 6'2". And he was tall and thin, but he had these wide hips, and when he walked, he kind of swayed his hips as if he was a female. He had a very effeminate way of walking. So I told him what happened, and he said, I think it's the linkage. If you take this plate off the top of the gear shift, you should be able to link back on the linkage and get it to go back into gear. And he said, here, I'll show you. But then he changed his mind and said, I better not do that. So he towed the vehicle back onto my driveway. So again, at that time, in 2019, I thought to myself that the kid looked very much like Nick Mero. But why would that be Nick? According to his mother, Kathy, who would speak to my mom and members of our family, the Meros had all moved into Utah, and Nick was going to school for forestry out in Utah. So why on earth would Nick be in New Hampshire, in my hometown, driving a tow truck? So why would I even think that? So Nick Mero was born around 1997. So when this thing happened with the tow truck in 2019, Nick would have been around 22 years old. And that is exactly how old the tow truck driver looked. So I believe that that was Nick Mero driving the tow truck. But it gets even worse than that. Last fall, around September of 2020, my older daughter Eliza met a friend who is a boy, and that kid's name is Logan Gallagher. So I had agreed to meet my ex-wife Rachel and our 2 daughters at Dick's Sporting Goods to buy a new softball bat for Eliza for her birthday. She needed a new softball bat. So I met them over at that store, and they had Logan with them. So when Logan got out of the car, I saw that he was a few inches taller than I was, and he was thin. He had blonde hair and blue eyes, and he looked exactly like Nick Mero. He had the same features, and I remember thinking that's kind of awkward. And I wonder if Eliza has ever seen a photograph of her cousin Nick. It's her second cousin, I think. And what she'll think about having a friend named Logan that looks identical to her second cousin Nick, who supposedly lives out in Utah. So Logan says that he is 15, but he speaks with an extremely deep voice, and he looks like he's more in his early 20s than 15. He looks very mature. So even though I didn't automatically think that must be my cousin Nick Mero, I did not really like the fact that my daughter, who's 15, is now hanging out with a boy who looks to be in his 20s. So Logan kind of had this weird frog-like stare in his eyes, which is a common sign of people that are involved with the military, especially with MK Ultra. They get this very blank, wide-eyed gaze in their eyes, as if they're kind of daydreaming or staring in space, and they don't blink. And when they look at you, it doesn't exactly make you feel at ease. It looks like you're looking at a giant frog. So if anybody sees this type of look, it is a trait of those who are involved in the U.S. military, involved with MK Ultra. So it is definitely not a look that people should get used to or trust. So in September and October 2020, I saw Logan Gallagher a couple more times after that. One time Eliza wanted me to give them a ride downtown. So I picked up Eliza and Michaela, and they had Logan Gallagher with them. And I drove them to downtown Keene, and I let them go to different stores. And I waited out in the van, and I kind of played chauffeur and let them do their thing walking around the downtown area. And the next time I brought them out trick-or-treating, Logan had his little brother with him, who must have been around 8 or 9 years old. And Michaela had her friend named Ezra with her. So I brought 5 kids out trick-or-treating. So the one thing I noticed was that Logan Gallagher would go out of his way to act very polite to everybody that we would come in contact with. But he acted rude to me. If I were to ask my kids a question, like what neighborhood do you want to drive to next? Or what store do you guys want to hit next? Logan would often talk over me and interrupt me as if he wanted to do all the talking. And I understood that. When you got the kids together, they really do not want to hear their dad talking. So I was quiet for most of the trip, and I let the kids kind of do their own thing. But when you have to ask them a question, and you got this young kid talking over you and being kind of rude, it becomes kind of obvious that the kid is going out of his way to kind of cause trouble. So how I reacted to that was that I'm not going to talk to Logan at all. I'm not going to make conversation with him. I'm not going to ask him any questions. I'm just going to ignore Logan 100%. I don't even want to catch eyes with him, because as soon as I do, I got this weird guy kind of staring at me without blinking, kind of gawking at me, as if he is trying to get me to feel awkward or nervous. But he is very talkative. He's starting conversation, and he's being polite to my daughters. And it sounds like there's some 25-year-old kid kind of chaperoning them around instead of another 14 or 15-year-old kid. So I decide just to ignore Logan and kind of limit everything I have to say. So I knew that the military often sends kids, young men, and young women who are in their mid-20s into high schools. And that is part of their MK Ultra programming. That is part of the U.S. military's control of society. That is how sick they are in the U.S. military. They need their people. They need their young men and young women, even in your grammar schools and in your high schools, to control what the kids do in the hallways, to control who's the best on the school football team or basketball team. These people are control freaks. These people are the worst control freaks than you could ever imagine. It's not enough for the U.S. military to take over all politics, to take over all major corporations, to take over all the media. They need to take over your high schools. They need to take over your neighborhoods. They need to take over your families. And they get psychotics like Eric and Kathy Mero, who this all sounds normal to. Kathy Mero doesn't want her son to take a girl, to take a buddy from high school to the senior prom. She has to take her own son to the senior prom. That's pretty bad. Nick's father, Eric Mero, cannot even send his son off to college. They have to follow their son to whatever place he's accepted into college, buy a house in that area, and then have Nick live at home. So these are the type of people that are in control of your military, that has taken over control of your government, that has taken control over your society. So they want you to have exactly no rights or no freedom, because this is how they naturally are. They are autistic and they are schizophrenic and they are all highly psychotic. So again, I don't even want to consider that this kid may be Eliza's cousin who's in the military, who's part of the MK Ultra program, who is her second cousin, and he follows her with his family to her hometown and introduces himself as some kid that may go on to be her boyfriend. These acts are despicable. These acts are sick. These actions of your U.S. military expose them to be exactly as everyone has described them who talks about the U.S. military involved in MK Ultra. They are like part of a cult. They are Satanists. They are child abusers. They practice inbreeding. And if you try to raise your family up right and fight to keep them out of this and fight to keep them free of this, they'll send in your sick, maniac 20-year-old cousin to come date your daughter. And that's cool with his parents, Eric Mero and Kathy Mero. So I was happy to hear that Eliza said that Logan had begun to act rude to her. And he started going out with other kids. And I heard it from my younger daughter, Michaela, that Logan was smoking pot with girls. And so Eliza did not like hearing that Logan was smoking pot and was smoking pot with other girls. So she broke up with him. So Eliza sent me a friend request on Facebook. So I was looking at her photographs. And she had a couple posted of her and Logan. So I took these photos off the internet. So this is not the Logan Gallagher that I was introduced to when we went to go buy a softball bat, and who I took into the downtown area to go shopping one night, and who I took out with my kids trick-or-treating last Halloween of 2020. It looks kind of like him, but this is not him. So this is what MK Ultra does. They get 2 kids, they get 2 or 3 people that all resemble each other, and they all play the role of one person. What the military likes to do, again, is to use 3, 4, or 5 different people to all act as one individual. That's how they confuse people. If you have a neighbor, they might have 3 guys that kind of resemble each other. And whenever you walk out of your house and you see your neighbor waving at you, or you see your neighbor walking by and he might strike up some conversation with you, the military has found that you may begin to associate 3 different people as the same guy. They may not even resemble each other exactly. They may just look a little similar, but have differences. But if they introduce these men as the same individual, regular people will see them all as the same individual. And this gets to be kind of scary. If you think about your mom divorcing your father and then dating some guy from the military, and it turns out to be 4 or 5 guys that all kind of look alike, this might be a little perverted when you think about your kid's sister or your daughter or your aunt meeting an undercover military agent, and they begin to date that man, and that guy turns out to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different men. And this is all part of their mind control. And they all get off on it. They all date different women. And they all switch their spouses. Every night they go home with a different woman. Every night they go home to a different house. And these men secretly do not care about these women. They get off on controlling women. They get off on how intelligent they are. And how they could fool everybody. And how everything like marriage and relationships is a big joke. So the U.S. military is a cult of perverts. They're perverts. And what helps drive this is that they are homosexuals. They are bisexuals. Their first loyalty is to the military. Their first loyalty is to the program that they are involved with. And they get men who think it's all a big joke. And if the military decides to attack one of these women, they have 5 or 10 different men, all acting as their boyfriend or spouse, who will be willing to kill them. They'll know who will not have a problem doing that. So this is what your U.S. military does with their huge military budget. You make sure that you work real hard, and a huge amount of your taxes go to fund this machine, this military machine. And this is what they're using your tax dollars for. To make a mockery out of America, to make a joke out of our government, to make a joke out of our corporations, to make a joke out of our arts and sciences, and to even make a joke out of the people you love. They will make a joke out of marriage, out of families. They will make a joke out of love, because at their core, these are stupid, egotistical, and hateful men that get off on all of this. They only care about themselves, and they secretly hate the American people. So a lot of people will wonder how they get a class of men that are going to hate America and have a disdain for American families and dislike regular American citizens. So I was thinking about that, and it occurred to me, Eric Mero is a microcosm of the men that do well in the military. That a microcosm of the type of men that go on to do well in the military are going to be just like Eric Mero. When he was younger, he had diabetes, so they did not want him to join the military. and go through basic training. And what they did not want to tell our family was that an alternative plan was for Nick Mero to go to college, get his degree, and then join the military as an officer. He would join the military as a higher up. So they were not going to take him into basic training. So the story that they were not going to allow him to join the military wasn't the truth. They wanted him to join the military, but as an officer, because Nick Mero had the qualities that the United States military is looking for. This is exactly what they are looking for. So Nick Mero is autistic. Nick Mero had no life through high school. He stayed home with his parents. He went to school on the bus, and then his mom would meet him at the bus stop, or the bus would drop him off right in front of the house, and he would go right back home to his mom. Nick had no friends. Nick had no social life. As far as I know, Nick didn't have a job. The only thing that Nick had was the ROTC program, the Junior Officers Club in high school. And right out of high school, he was not going to join the military, even though he wanted to. Instead, he went off to college. His parents wanted him to go to college. And were they going to send him off to college for Nick to learn a little bit about life by making his own decisions? Was Nick going to go off into the world without someone like his mother or father chaperoning him so he could learn about making life's decisions, so that he could see the world with his own eyes and start to learn independently? And the answer is no. His mother and his father, Kathy and Eric Mero, had to follow Nick to college. They had to buy a house in whatever area Nick was going to college, so that he could then run back home to mommy and daddy after his college classes every day. So Nick knows nothing about life. Nick knows nothing about people. Nick lives a very sheltered life, and all decisions are made for Nick by his parents. And when Nick gets out of college, when Nick gets out of his officers training club, this autistic and sheltered young man is going to then be handed over to the United States military and will become a higher up. He will become an officer in the military. And in the military, Nick Mero would only know to do exactly as he is commanded. He is going to think exactly how they program him to think. He is going to feel exactly how they program him to feel. And this is all done through the MK Ultra program. What they do is they use radio frequency technology. It is top secret technology. And they connect a handler to someone like Nick Mero. And this handler could be a very disturbed person. And as Nick goes through life and he sees things, the handler is going to override Nick's immature brain. The handler is going to override Nick's undeveloped emotional system. And Nick is going to think, and he is going to feel exactly what the handler feels. And this works very well with people who are autistic. People who are autistic are mentally retarded. They are emotionally retarded. They don't know how to respond appropriately in social situations. So it's very easy to control those types of people through the MK Ultra program. That is what they're looking for. People with low IQs and people who have autism. They freeze up. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to respond to a stressful situation. So when they're placed into a stressful situation, they start to panic. They start to freeze up. And if someone comes along who is in control and says, go do this, go do that, they don't care what they're being told to do. They will do whatever they are commanded to do because they are panicking. They are freezing up. They are going blank. They don't know what to do. So they are happy to take orders because at least they know what to do. And then they get a pat on the back. Then they get a handshake. You did well. Then they get a medal. Then they get a promotion. And they find that everybody in their little officers club is very much like them. All of these officers have low IQ. All of these officers have very low emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence has a lot to do with how intelligent you are, how diplomatic you are, how you perceive people, how you communicate with people, how you get along with people, how you understand people, how you read people. If you have a high emotional intelligence, this will lead to you being psychic in a way. You developing extrasensory perception. Having a high emotional intelligence is a way to becoming a true psychic. So they take all these kids that have none of that and they want to promote them as officers in these different militaries, like the British military and the United States military that is currently taking over everything. And do you think that these officers are going to understand anything that they're taking over? Do you think that they are going to care about all of these positions that they're taking away from real people who have worked real hard to develop those areas, who have worked real hard to develop themselves so that they could fill those positions? And we are talking about the arts and sciences. We are talking about the press, information, the media. We are talking about the government, diplomacy, international affairs. We are talking about corporations, business, small businesses, agriculture, farms, the American economy. You think that these autistic young men like Nick Mero, that are all officers in the United States military, will know anything about any of that? Do you think Nick Mero would have any experience about any of that? Do you think that men like Nick Mero are going to respect anybody who was once in those positions or who was once in those departments and worked real hard to educate themselves so that they could go into those areas? Do you think that men like Nick Mero, do you think that the Officers Club is going to care about any of that? And the answer is no. The answer is we want that. The United States military wants that now. We have to take that over. So then you have men like Nick Mero in charge of these areas. They have taken over these areas. They have taken over every power center of human society and has replaced it with military personnel. These men are not educated to fill these departments, to fill these positions. They have no background in those areas. They have not worked and studied so that they would be the right people to be hired or to develop those areas. That is why you see when the militaries take over, the quality of everything starts to go down. Everything starts to get shut down. When they take over one of these areas, they fire everybody who's been working hard to get into those areas. They keep a few people on that the Officers Club can learn from, the basics. But what you will find is that the quality, the intelligence, and the meaning of everything starts to be reduced to the point that all of these areas start to become a joke. You turn on the TV, what you hear on the news is a joke. You look into their different science programs, and if you really study what they are telling you, you'll see that that is a joke. If you want to go out and watch a movie one night, and you go see a film, it will be pathetic and stupid because the military has taken over all of the arts and sciences. You see our economy failing because the military has taken over the entire economy and has favored giant monopoly corporations, many from Europe, that have bought out all of the smaller corporations in America. And do you think that Nick Mero has any idea what that means? And the answer is no. And if you try to explain it to Nick Mero, do you think Nick Mero will care? And the answer is no. Nick Mero would become enraged if you even dare explain to him why the military shouldn't take over all of these aspects of human society. How dare you? How dare you question the military? He outranks you. You are nothing to him. You don't even have a rank. You're a citizen. They round people like you up and they kill you in death camps. They'll put you in Abu Ghraib prison. They'll put you in Guantanamo Bay. Giant militaries will round you up like in World War II, Nazi Germany, and put you into a concentration camp. That is what these giant militaries think about you citizens and think about human rights. You are nothing to them. So we are taught to think, who are these supermen in these militaries? Who are these supermen that have taken over all of these giant power centers? They've taken over the media. They're the media gods. They've taken over the science. They're science gods. They're working in all of this amazing technology and spacecraft and aircraft. Who are these gods that are taking over the world? And the answer is, look at Nick Mero. This is a guy whose mother brought him to the prom because they didn't have enough sense to say, hey Nick, you don't have a date? All of the girls in your weird school don't want to go to the prom with you? Well, instead of going there by yourself, like a man, like an independent, your mom is going to have to take you. This is the guy that had no friends in high school outside of the ROTC program. This is the guy whose parents followed him to college. He couldn't even go off to college by himself. This is an individual who was considered autistic and emotionally retarded by everybody who knew him in our family. Nick's a little slow. He's real smart with some things, but he's pretty slow with others. This is who's going to go on to become a higher up in the military. Nick Mero is going to become an admiral in the military, a general. He has higher up written all over him. He has career military written all over him. So when you start to see these military agents surrounding you, surveilling you, and you see that many of them look autistic, many of them look borderline retarded, all of them look very odd, many of them look angry, and when you start to get to know some of them, when they're sent by the MK Ultra program to befriend you in an undercover capacity, and you start to get to know some of them, you realize that they have very low IQ. They have a very shallow way of looking at the world. They don't care about people. If somebody gets hurt or injured, they think it's funny. If there's somebody working on something and the military could go, kick down that guy's door, destroy what he's working on, and haul him off to jail, that would be real funny to these guys. Do you know that that guy was working on cancer research? None of that matters to them. They have low IQs. They have low emotional intelligence. They have been sheltered from learning anything about the world from these older men like Eric Mero. And Robin Williams, also known as Admiral Dennis Blair. And James Brolin, all these older men, they want their sons to have no life experience. They do not want their sons to have any life experience whatsoever. Nick Mero didn't even have a girlfriend in high school, and then his parents were following him up to college to babysit him up there too. So when Nick Mero joins legions of other young men just like himself, do you think that they're going to respect America at all? Do you think they're going to respect somebody who's worked hard and studied hard and lived hard on their own 2 feet and have managed to find a wife and have a family, do you think that the officers club will care about that at all? They will not even understand that. They have no idea what that really means. They have no respect for any of that. So these will be the right people to go invade that, to go attack that. And that is American families. That is American houses. These will be the right young men that have no respect or even an understanding about any of that. These men are socially retarded. If you try to explain anything to them about why that's wrong, it'll be like talking to a retarded 5-year-old. That is what the military is looking for. Those are the people that could be sent to any foreign country and be told that any law-abiding village is the enemy, and they could go from door to door with their M16s. They could kick down the door, and while you and your family are having breakfast together, men like Eric Mero could march in and rape your wife in front of you, right on the kitchen table. Then they could drag your kids out and throw your kids in a ditch somewhere. These are the people that they find to do that because it's funny to them. Because when they go there, they are conditioned to feel hate and rage right before they go there. These troops are given steroids. They are drugged. They are driven into fits of rage through the MK Ultra program. And they are then unleashed on any family in America, on any village in some other country. And these are the type of young men who will do real well at attacking innocent people. This is what the military is looking for. So what I did before was that I did not talk about Kathy Mero. 1, because she was my aunt, and 2 was because she was a woman. So I want to warn everybody who looks into this, or investigates this, or exposes this. That is the trait of most heterosexual men, is that they tend to ignore the women as threats. They only look at the men as threats. They don't see these female agents as threats. They are just as bad, if not worse, than the men. So the military counts on that. So do not do what I did, which is kind of disregard these female agents. You have to expose them too. So let's talk about my Aunt Kathy. So my Aunt Kathy, she moved out of the house when she was 18. She had 3 sisters and 1 brother. So Kathy moved out of the house when she was 18. And she started dating a guy named Gary. And Gary was in real estate. And I guess what he did back in the 80s, he would represent a real estate company. And he would tell the real estate company, hire me to also renovate the houses a little bit. For the most part, he would paint the houses and have new carpeting put in. And that helped him sell the homes a lot quicker. So he developed a business on the side of like home improvement. And I guess Kathy worked with him. And at some point, Gary started to take all the money that he earned in real estate, and he would bet all his money on the horse races, and he began to lose all of his money. So at that point, my aunt left him. She divorced him, and she ended up moving into one of their customers' houses, and that was Eric Mero. According to a family member, she met Eric as a customer of their home improvement company. They were painting or wallpapering this guy's house. And that is how she met Eric. When I was young, my Aunt Kathy would kind of show up at different family functions. If we had a birthday party, she would show up. But she was not exactly friendly to me. My other aunts and uncle were very warm and very friendly. Kathy acted a little standoffish. She acted a little cold or detached, but she was a very pretty lady, and she was a little bit of a wise ass. So that was kind of her personality. So I never got too close with her. I was closer to my other aunts and uncle, but that was just the way she was. After she met Eric, she began to drink. Eric was known to be an alcoholic. He would drink huge bottles of vodka every day. And Kathy also began to drink. So they had their son, Nick, around 1997. And I guess around 2010, they were at a restaurant. It was my Aunt Darlene, my Aunt Kathy Mero, and her son Nick, who was probably around 12 or 13 years old at that time. So Kathy went to the bathroom, and some time goes past, and she's not coming back. So Darlene decides to go check on her, and she finds Kathy passed out on the floor of the women's restroom, just on the floor in front of the sinks. And she has to try to stand her up, and she couldn't do it. So she had to get a couple of waitresses to help stand Kathy up. So I do not know anybody who would be in their 40s to go out to a restaurant with their sister and their 12-year-old son and then go pass out in the bathrooms. So that suggests somebody who not only has an alcohol problem, but somebody who has a mental problem too. This was somebody who had been triggered to want to lay down on the floor of the bathroom at a public restaurant. That's not a sane decision. So at some point, they began selling stuff like pasta. Eric Mero and Kathy Mero supposedly started selling products like pasta at different farmers markets in California. So around 2010, my mother says she goes over to Kathy Mero's house, and Kathy Mero is like moving in slow motion. My mom says that she's never seen someone move so slow in her life. And Kathy is packaging up the pasta. She has to weigh it, then put it in a cellophane bag, tie it shut, and then put a label on it, like ziti or spaghetti. And she is handwriting every label. She doesn't have a stamp. She doesn't have a printer that prints out the labels. So she's writing ziti or spaghetti or angel hair pasta 1,000 times in a row onto labels that she's putting on her bags of pasta. And my mom says that she is moving more slow than anyone she's ever seen before. So this suggests somebody that alcohol is affecting. She is having a certain degree of mental problems because of her alcohol use. So people who drink have more than enough problems just drinking. If they have been targeted or are under the control of the military through the MK Ultra program, that is a recipe for disaster. I think part of what the MK Ultra program does is damage people's brains so that they are easier to control. And one of the things that they do is attempt to slow the breathing down. They attack the respiratory system, especially when they're sleeping at night. There are ways to use the radio frequency technology to prevent the people from breathing normally. So if you drink and you've drank until you're drunk, the military can damage your brain during the night. The last thing that you want to do is drink if you have become a target of the MK Ultra program, or if you have fallen under the control of the MK Ultra program. If you're a Kathy Mero, the last thing that you want to do is drink, because they will destroy your brain, and then they will use a series of handlers and the radio frequency technology to remote control you. And then certain ideas like helping the military attack your nephew enabling your son to be part of the MK Ultra program so that he could date his second cousin without her knowing who he is. These type of things will start making sense to you when you have brain damage. So I first started recording the people in the areas where I lived due to the fact that the people look like zombies. These agents of the military, these agents of the NSA, these agents of MK Ultra very often looked like they had brain damage. Some looked retarded. Some looked like they had Down syndrome. Many looked psychotic. Many looked possessed. And that is a big reason they tell all of their agents to wear sunglasses to hide what they look like. So these people in the military, they are actively trying to destroy not only our country, but everybody's brains as well, to make a subservient and obedient mass of people. So the last thing that you want to do is drink. And if you are a target of the MK Ultra program, drinking or using drugs is a way to commit mental suicide. You will wake up one day and it's not going to be you anymore. You'll wake up one day and you'll have no idea what you were doing. Or these agents will just kill you in your sleep. So I think a big part of Kathy's problem was that she was a severe alcoholic. Okay, so I was speaking to my mother and I found some very interesting things out about Nick Mero. And that has to do with the town that they supposedly moved to when they moved to Utah was called Logan. Logan, Utah. So that is a very interesting name. And as you may remember, Logan is the name that he used up here in New Hampshire when he attempted to date his second cousin, my daughter Eliza. That is the name Nick Mero used. I guess it was an easy name for him to remember. Where are you moving to, Nick? He's moving to Logan, Utah. He memorized that. So if anybody in our family were to ask him, he wouldn't screw up and tell them that he was moving to Vermont or forget what the story was. He knew Logan, Utah. So he did such a good job remembering Logan that that is the name he decided to use in the Keene, New Hampshire area, was Logan. So I began talking to my mother a little bit about Kathy Mero, and I asked her when was the last time that she saw Kathy before she moved out of California. So she said it was around 2015, and the Meros were moving out of California, Southern California, and they were supposedly moving to their new home in Logan, Utah, North Logan, Utah. And Kathy asked for my mother to come over and help her move, to help her get the house ready, I guess. And so she said when she showed up, Kathy was cleaning the kitchen and Eric Mero was just getting ready to leave and follow the moving truck to Utah. I guess he was in his Hummer. They were big into always driving Hummers, which is a very expensive vehicle that goes through a lot of gas. So that is probably the last type of vehicle that you want to get in Southern California, especially if you supposedly do not have a lot of money. But that is exactly the type of vehicle that they always got. All of these agents of the MK Ultra program, they all lie, especially about how much money they have. So Eric was in his Hummer, I guess, and he was going to go follow the moving truck all the way to Utah. But Kathy had to stay behind in the house. My mother said they cut it down right to the last moment with getting everything packed up in time for the new buyers to move in. So my mother said that when she got there, Eric hung around for a little bit and then he left to go follow the moving truck. And inside the house, inside Kathy Mero's house, there were hundreds of flies all over the house. And I said, why do you think there were flies in there? And she says, probably because they had a big dog. They had a Rottweiler. So maybe they let the dog use the bathroom in the backyard, and that attracted flies, which got into the house. And I asked her, did the house smell unusual when you got there? And she said, no, it just smelled like a dog. It smelled like their dog in there. But that is an interesting note, that the house was infested with flies when my mother went there to help them clean up on the last day they occupied that house. So my mother said that she was to clean the bathroom while Kathy was cleaning the kitchen. And she said around 2 or 3 o'clock, they finished cleaning up, and just as they were getting ready to leave, the new owners showed up with a moving truck, ready to move in. So they had cut it that close. And so after working the whole day, my mom says, let's go out and get something to eat. There's a restaurant over here, I'll buy you dinner. And for some reason, her sister, Kathy Mero, said that she did not want to go out to eat. She was to stay in a nearby hotel overnight, and then I guess leave for Logan, Utah the next morning. So I find that that is a little bit unusual. If you were to work all day cleaning a house and moving out of a house, and you were staying at a hotel that night, I think the first thing that you would want to do is go get something to eat. When you get finished, I do not understand why Kathy would say that she didn't want to go out to eat. And so my mother tried to convince her to get something to eat, and she required a little bit of convincing. And she said to my mother for her to wait in the lobby of the hotel. And then Kathy disappeared for something like an hour or 2 hours. And when she reappeared, she had her son Nick with her. And then they all went out to eat. And when they were getting ready to leave, my mother says, I'll give you a call soon. I'll call you in a few days because I really want to keep in touch. And Kathy replied with, well, since Jim, who was my mother's boyfriend, talks to Eric Mero, why don't you just relay messages through them? If there's something that you need to know, like an update about the Meros, just ask Jim, because he talks to Eric every day. So that is what Kathy Mero said to my mother on their final day together in Southern California, right before Kathy Mero was to move out of Southern California to her new house in Logan, Utah. That was how Kathy wanted to leave it. Kathy insisted that my mother drive over and help her clean up her house right before she sold it. And then once they were done working all day, Kathy did not even want to go out to get something to eat with my mother. And when my mother said, I'll call you in a few days, her sister says, well, don't bother. Just relay messages through Jim Pace and Eric Mero, almost as if Kathy is very used to letting Eric Mero, her husband, handle all of her personal affairs. I consider that very unusual and suspicious. The same thing as all of these flies all over her house. So her behavior suggests that something is wrong with Kathy Mero. She's acting like she's not even my mother's sister anymore. So I worry about my mother's safety, hearing about her going into that, and hearing about how Kathy reacted to my mother who went to go help her. We're about to move out of the house, but I want you to clean my bathroom. And then once you're done with that, if you want to talk to me again, just relay any messages through our husbands. Who on earth would come up with that? It's almost as if Kathy Mero has been replaced by somebody. In the MK Ultra program, they create doubles. They create clones of people. Based on her behavior, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that that wasn't even Kathy Mero. that was some other look-alike agent that had called my mother into that house, possibly seeing if they could somehow abduct her or get her on the last day they had that house. Maybe the new occupants, the new buyers that showed up in that van just as my mother and Kathy were leaving, maybe they had some other plans for those people. For example, my mother's cleaning the bathroom and those people come with their moving truck early. They knock on the door and Kathy knows to leave the residence, get in her car, and drive down the road. And then these strangers enter the house and they walk down the hallway and they surprise my mother who's cleaning the bathroom. So I thank God that that did not happen. But this is what happens when you let the MK Ultra program and handlers take over your life. You get these flakes like Kathy Mero, and you don't know if she has been replaced or just her brain by these people. Either way, it is dangerous. So my mother said that Kathy Mero also lost a lot of weight at this point. She looked skinny. So once again, this does not put my mind at rest that this was really Kathy Mero. Knowing their tactics and knowing what they do, this could have been a double acting as Kathy Mero. Or Kathy Mero might have been on drugs at that point. She might have shifted her addiction from alcohol to drugs at that point. If you spend all day helping somebody move out of their house, and then after all of that, they don't want to go out and get a bite to eat, they have to run off and go back to the hotel room, what that suggests is a drug addiction. She wanted to run off and go get high, possibly with the money that the MK Ultra program would pay her for calling my mother into that house, calling my mother into that situation. Her behavior is just bizarre the whole way through. Everything that she said to my mother was bizarre. So if she has lost a bunch of weight, she just might be a drug addict and she has to go run off and score her drugs. That's the only idea that I could come up with. Why she will not want to go out with her sister. Why she would not want to go out with her sister on her last night in California. So if this is Kathy, this is how Kathy is. She does not give a crap about anyone but herself. If you want to pay her to go set up her nephew to get abducted by the military, she's your woman. Just take a look at the expression on Kathy Mero's face. Take a look at the expression on her face. This is a photograph that is being taken in the front yard at my grandparents' house. I think my mother is taking a photo with her cell phone. And this is the expression on Kathy Mero's face. And this is the expression on Nick Mero's face. Nick looks absolutely psychotic. It looks like something is wrong with Nick Mero. And look at the expression on his mother's face. It looks like she cannot be more conniving. It looks like she's plotting to do somebody in. This is just a terrible expression to have on your face, especially in a family photograph. This is MK Ultra at the very best. This is somebody who drinks every day and has had their brain completely controlled by the MK Ultra program. If this is the new Kathy that the military has produced, placing her under mind control, I want to explain how they may get that way. So I was thinking about it, about how they could create an agent who was not born in some incest house, who was not born into satanic ritual abuse, that was not brought up in some pagan family. So the first thing they look for is a sucker. So Kathy always had a low IQ. My grandmother told us that she was called in by Kathy's teacher when Kathy was a senior in high school. And her teacher said that Kathy was reading at a 3rd grade level. The kids in the 4th grade were reading better than Kathy Mero was as a senior in high school. So Kathy has a low IQ. Number 2, with a low IQ, they are easy to program. So I've said this before, their best agents are their best hoes. That is what they call people that they control. They call them hoes. They are easy to influence. They are easy to manipulate. They are easy to take advantage of. They are easy to have sex with. They are easy to rip off. They are hoes. Well, all of these agents in the MK Ultra program were the best hoes. They do not want independent and intelligent people working for them. They don't want people with their own minds that want to make their own decisions about life. They want a race of idiots that get confused and only know to follow direction, to follow suggestions, to follow the program. That is the only thing they want in the MK Ultra program. So Kathy probably proved that she was all that and then some. So step 2, they start to program the agent to go along with the group. And how they do that is they see if you start to respond to external stimuli. If you're trying to make a decision and a bunch of people around you start nodding their head, even though they don't know you, even though they're just random people in the area, and you get the idea that maybe you should agree, that maybe you should go along with it, you're responding to external stimuli. You're responding to the group pressure, to peer pressure. So they start to notice if you could be triggered by anybody in the area to make decisions. If you're unsure what to do and somebody walks by and gestures to the door and you think it's a good idea to walk out of that door, the MK Ultra program will say that you are responding well to their suggestions, and they'll soon introduce a handler to you. And one of these handlers that they introduced to Kathy is a woman named Irma Hines. Irma Hines. She says that she is a cousin, but she is lying. I asked her in front of my grandfather how we were related, and she told me, we are not related by blood, but I feel like we're family because we grew up in the same neighborhood as your family, and we have been hanging out with your family since we were young. So it's like we are cousins, but we are not blood related. So that is what Irma Hines and her sister said to me in front of my grandfather. My grandfather had to go to the hospital, and I asked them when we were all standing in the room, in my grandfather's hospital room. We were all standing around his bed, and I asked her that, and they felt pressured to be honest in the presence of my grandfather. Even though they'll tell other people that they're cousins, Irma Hines has told my mother that she is the daughter of my mother's aunt, so they are cousins. So Irma Hines is a liar, and her sisters are liars. So here's a picture of Irma Hines. And as you can see by the look in her eyes, she looks like she is under mind control. So this is something like a handler that will show up at different family functions. So Irma Hines makes a point to show up at all types of family functions and act like she is family when the truth is that who knows who this woman is? Who knows if this is even the Irma Hines that would hang out with my mother when they were children? There is some confusion in my family if she is really even related to us or not. Why is Irma Hines telling people like my mother that they are cousins, and then in the presence of my grandfather she says, no, we're not related by blood. We've just known your family since we were little kids, so we feel like cousins. So who knows who this woman is? This is just another agent of the MK Ultra program.
Hot New Mexico chili chicken and then one with mild. From Hatch, mild. And I brought nails for Eric because it's his birthday, and that's his favorite food.
Really? But so we don't.
Get to eat this there? Yeah, I brought enough.
Somebody called me. Did you call me, Ovino? Somebody called me. Did you call me, Ovino? Somebody called me. Did you call me, Ovino?
Yeah, I called you. You told your son that was 80 years old.
No.
Yes, you
I
did.
did. Yes, I did. No. Yeah, how did you call?
That's right, Chloe.
Why is Irma Hines telling people like my mother that they are cousins, and then in the presence of my grandfather she says, no, we're not related by blood. We've just known your family since we were little kids, so we feel like cousins. So who knows who this woman is? This is just another agent of the MK Ultra program. But do you think that Kathy would catch on to any of this? Do you think that Kathy would ask some tough questions like, who are you and who are you related to, like I asked that day and got that answer from her? Kathy Mero is somebody who's not going to figure any of that out. Kathy Mero will not ask any questions. And so Kathy Mero will be the type of person who is very easy to control by these handlers like Irma Hines. So step one is first prove that you will fall for a lot of their games. Step two to creating an agent is to prove that you're going to go along with whatever the group wants. You're going to respond to external stimulation. You're going to respond to handlers like Irma Hines. So step three, they will start using people like Kathy Mero in a surveillance game to see if she'll start to take part in messing with people. So they might introduce her into an area where she will see somebody becoming irate or angry or acting irrational. And Kathy will be led to believe that these people are not one of them. They're not insiders. Something is wrong with them. And they will start to see if Kathy begins to enjoy also messing with those people. And I think that she proved that she'll do that when she gets on the phone with me, pretending to be a representative at the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. And she keeps me on the phone for a half hour, talking in circles and playing some weird mind game on the phone with me. It shows that she is enjoying her position as a authority figure, and she's enjoying toying with the people who are not one of them, who are not part of their group, who have not gone along with their disturbed group. So all the retards kind of drift together and join the other retards, and they really enjoy the power that that brings, the power that that gives them. And the last step is to start to control people as a handler through the radio frequency energy. And they start to introduce that Kathy can have some control over people that she is connected to. And I firmly believe that the reason I'm losing my voice right now is because of people like Eric Mero and Nick Mero and Kathy Mero. And what they like to do is, while I'm trying to talk, they will use this energy connection to press down on their throats, to hold their breath, to do a series of things that will make it difficult for me to talk, so that I cannot do these reports. This is what they do every time I want to discuss something, is they use the energy to give me a stuttering problem, to take away my voice, to make my voice sound hoarse or high-pitched instead of how it normally is. So step 4 is they introduce Kathy Mero to the energy, to these energy systems, in a role as a handler. And they tell her, try to get Linda to get angry at her son. Try to get Linda to give John a smack when he's younger. Try to get her extremely angry about something. Try to get her to do the wrong thing. And they find that people with higher intelligence, a stronger drive, seem to resist this. They go out of their way to resist these foreign thoughts from these scumbag agents like Kathy and Eric Mero and Nick Mero. My mother has resisted them for a long time. She's a very smart and strong-willed woman. And so they hate her because of that. Try to control this one. We could get her to do a few things, but we can't get her to do other things. We can't get her to lose her temper and hit one of her kids, to really hurt one of her kids, to abandon one of her kids. We can't get her to do stupid things like lose money, make poor decisions, become an idiot, get confused and make the wrong decisions. So this group of idiot agents, this group of hoes, start taking that personally. They start to develop a hatred for people like me and my mother, for anybody with a strong will and their own mind that does not like to go along with the group, who does not like to fall under the control of this group. They develop a group hatred for these people, and they all go out of their way to make life real tough on these people. These people all gang up on me every day. I just went for a run up the street, and they were taking things and jabbing it in their legs, in their knees, and in the bottom of their feet, so that I cannot run up the street and get rid of some of this stress. And when I come back here and do a recording, I could barely get the words out without a great deal of pain and strain on my throat. So those are a few steps that this MK Ultra program will put somebody through to figure out if they're one of them. Again, they're looking for hoes or people that are easy to control. They're looking for people with low IQs. They're looking for people that are going to respond to outside suggestions from even strangers about what to do. They're going to be easy to program or convince to do things based on whoever's around them gesturing in any way the CIA thinks is appropriate, and these idiots will go along with it. And later on, this will develop into mind control, and they'll attempt to give them a sick sense of humor. They'll attempt to instill in them a cruelty or a callous way of looking at things. They'll attempt to give them homosexual thoughts. They will attempt to instill in them a sense of elitism. Step 3, they'll involve them in entry-level mind control programs where they can start harassing a target, maybe in a social situation. And step 4, they'll be introduced to controlling people through the radio frequency technology and developing a sense of elitism over the people that they are controlling. They think it's their right to hurt me when I want to go for a run. They think it's their right to shut me up if they don't like what I'm saying on the internet. They could just physically grab me by my throat through the energy system if they don't like what I'm saying. They take part in remote assaults. So this appeals to guys like Eric Mero, Kathy Mero, and Nick Mero. Because if Eric, Kathy, or Nick Mero walked up to me and grabbed me by my throat if I was trying to speak in public, they might expect a little punishment in return. So they are good cowards. They are good at backstabbing people. They are good at going along with corrupt governments. They're good at being ignorant and stupid people that will go along with some of the most corrupt people in our country. So if you are not born into a intergenerational, satanic, ritually abused house where your parents were related, where your parents had you in an incest relationship and then started to molest you along with their community of fellow inbreds, this is how they'll begin to grab some of the weakest people in your family and use them as agents. They'll look for people like Kathy Mero to do that. So I call these people snakes, like a snake in the grass. You're not going to see them. And if you look at a snake It does not look too threatening. It has a little tiny head. It has no arms or legs. It has no claws. It has no fangs that you could see. It does not look threatening, but its bite can kill you. So these are snakes. These are snakes in the grass. And they assist the buggers. I call them bugs. And they are the worst people in the cult. They are pedophiles. They are necrophiles. They are cannibals. And they take part in the worst atrocities that you could imagine. And they spend their life placing snakes like Kathy and Nick Mero under mind control to use against the rest of you. So that is how some of their agents are created. So in the past, these are the people that usually go on to get victimized by the cult. They had it pretty normal growing up. They're pretty naive. They're pretty stupid. Any game that the MK Ultra program wants to run on them, Kathy and Nick Mero would fall for it. They are not street smart. They don't have much experience on the street. They're not too tough. They don't put up much of a fight. They don't have much experience dealing with thugs or military agents. They just kind of go along with everything. So these are the type of people that have been victimized in the past. And these are the type of people that get victimized in the cult. So that is why I try to encourage people to do everything to avoid becoming like them. Because these people get killed all the time. I try to give you the tools necessary to resist them, necessary to see through their games and not be controlled by them. So these people that had it pretty good growing up and love to go along with this MK Ultra group, at some point in their life, they're going to realize exactly what they've been surrounded by and see exactly what they've been going along with and what these people are really about. So it kind of relieves my conscience a little bit when I see all of these different crime scenes that I found through all my different investigations. And I wondered about all the people who have been victimized by these occult crimes through the centuries. And the truth is that quite often they will victimize their best hoes. They'll victimize people in their group. They'll victimize people that go along with them. So I think that they have killed countless snakes through the centuries. So if you start to investigate this and you find a few crime scenes, understand that through the centuries, and especially going into the future, a lot of the people that they are going to attack are going to be their own snakes that get what they deserve.